you were a student athlete, science major, you described your parents and sort of the direction that you were pointed in. I don't know, if that's a right way to describe it, maybe pushed, shoved, but maybe just talk a little bit about kind of what that experience was like for you as a kid and why sports and how much of that was influenced by your family or your friends or your surroundings at the time.
Yeah, so I owe everything to sports. It's taught me invaluable lessons that I carry throughout my whole life. Just being around it and at such a young age, it taught me like rigid structure, time management, leadership, teamwork. So that's what I bring to like my art in a sense. Um yeah, so just sports really like help me structure my morality and who I am as a person. So I just owe it all to sports pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you come at it from that angle, which is not something that you hear a lot of artists talking about. I mean, you'll see artists that might be fans, but it almost seems like maybe it's like this, jock stigma or something that, in teenage years, people kind of go one direction or another. And maybe that was, my experience where it seemed like, the certain kinds of kids were athletic and other kids were artistic. And you clearly have both, but you found your way from one to the other.
Yeah, I'm pretty short, so like I couldn't make it to the to the pros. So I really wanted to be a coach as well, but just life took me in another direction and I was always creative, but it was only till 2017 that I got my first opportunity that I really enhanced my creativity and I really wanted to delve that into a career path. And it's been hard, it's been ups and downs. Like I'm still a student of my craft. I'm still learning every single day. Even, being around this community, it's inspiring to me. So yeah, like for me, just never stop being a student and always explore, experiment with anything.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious about that first spark in the art world, being that you were so immersed in sports and, had that kind of family pressure from a career standpoint, when did you really get just tiny taste of, the arts?
The very first mural that I did, it was a portrait of Alicia Keys, and she reposted that. So I was like, gasping. And I was like, my very first mural and Alicia Keys posted it. That's like a wow factor to me, and like so gave me a push to like keep going. And it's my friends and family like after that moment, they've been very supportive of my career path, and every single year, like I've been getting so much better. So it's practice with anything, sports. Practice makes perfect. So not really perfect, but nothing's perfect. But the more you do it, the more you get used to enhancing or your craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking about this earlier with Pref when I interviewed him on the podcast, and we were just talking about the importance of feedback, sometimes validation. I mean, when you get that post from Alicia Keys, it does actually really give you some strength, some courage, some validation that says like, hey, maybe I'm good at this. Somebody's noticing it. But it's a fine line, right? Where you have to be careful that you're not doing it for others too.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you walk that line?
So, I mean, the validation is great. But at the end of the day, it's like for me as an artist, I don't know, I just enjoyed doing it, even if that was a free wall, right? Like, so that was my first take on a mural. I was like, oh, it's free, like I love doing community projects, giving back to my community. So that's how I find the balance of, making a living from it and also giving back to my community. So like I tread both lines very, equally, and it's been great.
And I know you studied graphic arts.
Yeah.
A lot of artists that I know seem to end up becoming graphic designers.
Mhm.
There seems to be this pull towards, and maybe it's changing for the better now, but like, well, I got to pay my rent. I need to make a career. This is the closest thing I can do to being artistic and having professional career. you mentioned being able to be paid for your craft. How did you not fall into, and it's not necessarily a trap, but it sounds like for you, you found your highest, outlet as an artist, not in graphic design.
Yeah, so I mean, my background in graphic design, it gave me an idea of how to place things together. I don't know if you know about my work, but I love like putting multiple images in my work to create a big storyline, creating a journey per se. So graphic design did play a big role, especially with, iPads, Procreate. That's how I do all my mockups. That's how I present it to clients. So yeah, graphic design still plays a big part of my life, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting how kind of each one of these layers ultimately informs what you do next, right? I mean,
Mhm.
even the things that appear to be detours, right? In your case, you spend all that time as an athlete, but you learn the work ethic, you learn the teamwork, you take things away from each one and let that inform what you're doing next. And that's what I see in your work now. All of that, led you to where you are.
Yeah, there's so many times I wanted to like quit because it's been ups and downs with art. Like, some seasons it's very off, especially in the winter. Like there's no, you know, job opportunities for that. So there's so many times where I really wanted to find a part-time job, full-time job, but my true calling is like not wasting my talent and pursuing something that I'm very passionate about. So that's just what led me to pursue art full time. It's like I don't want to give up my talent. It's God's given talent. I don't want to, waste
Mhm,
that.
mm. And you mentioned the Alicia Keys portrait. I know that you've done a lot of portraits of iconic figures. How do you decide, who you want to use for your portraits?
I don't know. Like sometimes it depends on the project or the theme of the give. Like organizations have a theme, and and that's how I like merging things together. I paint on vintage mirrors, so like I look at the frame and I'm like, ooh, like I kind of see a particular person. Like I had this vintage frame where it was a bird, it was a cage. It opened up. It was really cool. And I painted Maya Angelou and the bird, like, because when you open the cage, it's like where the cage bird sings. So when I look at, mirrors more often, I just see a portrait of somebody. And it goes back to my childhood, like mirror, mirror on the wall. That's been my motto. It's like, what I love to do because when you look at mirrors, it's the present moment and it's also reflecting back at you. So I love that whole reflection where you're the viewer, and when you turn around, you can still see perspective and things around you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, how you chose mirrors, but that's really interesting. Speaking of seeing perspective, I want to go back to this retinal detachment. My wife Katie experienced that. We talked about it.
It's really
Pretty
scary.
scary.
Yeah.
So tell me, how old were you when that first happened?
So the first time it happened was 2012. I was a senior in high school. Like I said, I was a student athlete. I already got my scholarship. So when that happened, that was the biggest scare of my life. I didn't know if I was gonna play basketball anymore. I didn't know if I was gonna lose my scholarship. So that was a very dark turning point in my life. So once I had that surgery, it's called scleral buckle, where they kind of flatten your eyeball and then put a silicone buckle in the back. I went, it just happened all of a sudden. Like, I don't know if I told you, but like it was a veil, like a curtain coming down. So it was like half black on top. So I told my parents, it was Mother's Day. I told my mom, I was like, I think I'm losing my sight. And she was like, what? Like, so the next day I immediately went to see the eye doctor, and they told me, sorry, I'm getting emotional. If I waited a week later, I would have total vision loss in my left eye. Yeah. Um, it was a really hard time. But since I caught it a little early, I didn't lose it entirely, but I still have permanent distortion in my left eye. So that's what ended up happening. And the recovery took about maybe 3-4 months. I had to wear an eye patch. I eye patched to graduation. It was funny. I still have pictures of it. It was really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then yeah. The second time was 2017, and that was after college. So I was able to still play to stay to still play basketball. So yeah, I was really happy about that.
Yeah. Was it the same eye?
The second time was my right eye. So
Yeah, yeah.
different. So I still had that same procedure. I went for an annual checkup and they were like, yeah, we have to do the surgery again because we see signs of it re-happening. So I had no other choice, you know. So I was like, okay, let's do it. I already know the healing process. I already know, how long it's gonna take. So and going back to sports, it's just like my mentality. It's like, you gotta do it. You have to excel over adversity. And that's just been, mental toughness is everything to me.
Boy, it does take some strength. I mean, I've just seen it firsthand. It's pretty serious and scary, and to have it happen twice.
Yeah.
But part of the thing that I've learned over time in life is those painful moments that suffering, can really serve you really well. And so, as you've turned that corner and, moved on in your life, I'm just curious, from that, do you really take away that's maybe informed your work at all?
Yeah, I mean, from those dark hours where I had, 3 to 4 months to myself, like I found hope through art. So, like, for me, I tried painting um, just with one eye, and to see, out of curiosity, if I still had, just still had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from there, for me, it's like all muscle memory. So you don't forget the things you do, especially with, sports too. Like when I had an eye patch, I still was able to shoot
Mm-hmm.
the ball,
Mm-hmm.
So it's for me, it's like the brain works wonders and it's all about like muscle memory. So that just helped me out of a dark time place in my life. Like art has been, I think that's when I pursued it, like really pushed it professionally when I figured out this whole, like, I can't do computers. I have to do something more hands-on. So yeah, art has been a very big part in
Yeah,
that
it's
time.
interesting because it might have really changed your life, in a beautiful way,
Yeah,
right? I mean, you might have stayed in front of the computer, you might have, continued on the path that you were on, and yeah, I'm sure at the time it really was challenging, but
yeah,
it ended up bringing you to what you're doing now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.